You're listening to Accent Amazing, where we combine language, linguistics, and history to help you improve your pronunciation and make your accent amazing. Hey everyone, so today I have with me my friend David Wilson, Dr. David Wilson, because he has a PhD in linguistics from UPenn. We did undergrad there at the University of Pennsylvania. We did linguistics together, but now he's got his PhD. David has also taught at various colleges, I believe. It's like Swarthmore College and Haverford
Swarthmore, Haverford, and Bryn Mawr. My apologies to any Bryn Mawr students. That was the one I taught at the least.
Yeah, so he has a lot of knowledge about linguistics, and I often ask him about certain things when I'm curious about the theoretical things that go on, the going-ons behind the scenes, a little bit more theoretical than I usually teach my students, but interesting nonetheless. So today we're going to talk about a bunch of topics, and this is my first time doing a guest podcast, so let's see how it goes. It's just going to be an interesting conversation. So I think we're going to talk about dialects first. And I know that Philadelphia has a very interesting dialect because we took Dr. Bill LeBeau's class there about American dialects. Why don't we start off with the accent here, and then go on to other dialects?
So you mentioned Bill LeBeau, William LeBeau, one of the more famous, or about as famous as any linguist can rightly be said to be.
The father of social linguistics,
yes,
I think they call him.
Yes, kind of the arguably the first person to really study the variation that exists in language, the differences in speech forms and things like that, at a systematic way. People have obviously always been aware that people in different parts of the world don't necessarily sound like them, right? But Bill, Dr. LeBeau, was one of the first people to really actually think about how to study that, how to measure it, how to quantify it, how to turn it into a real science. And part of the reason that he came here to the University of Pennsylvania, here in Philadelphia, is that Philadelphia did and still does have a pretty distinctive regional speech form, a pretty distinctive dialect that Bill found pretty fascinating.
And we've been told, I've heard, you can corroborate me on this, but like Philadelphia is the most well-studied dialect of English, right?
I would be shocked if it were anything else, frankly.
He would get us, all the students, to go out and do studies for social linguistics and other linguistics classes. Right?
And because before Bill passed away in the last handful of years, RIP, he had been working in the Philadelphia area for decades, since the 1970s, right? And so sort of one of the most prominent linguists studying this topic, working in basically the same area continuously for decades and decades. London English is the only thing I can think of that would even possibly have even anything akin to the amount of research that has been done on the local Philadelphia dialect here.
But let's talk about some of the vowels, right? So vowels are the key, right, to different dialects of English and accents.
We're gonna be spending a lot of today talking about vowels, because when English speech forms differ from each other, it's pretty rare that the consonants are really pulling much of the weight in that respect, right? Most English dialects differ because of their pronunciations of vowels, and as we'll see, because of the different ways that they're changing the vowel system of English to kind of try and make it a little more stable, as it were. So Philadelphia English, if any of you have seen depictions in popular media, they kind of, the English dialect the Philadelphia dialect of English is not always super well represented in popular media. I think you kind of get from the pretty good. Recently, there was a show on TV. It was called Mayor of Easttown. It was pretty solid. They do a decent job. Rocky, famously set in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Sly Stallone. I like him. He's like a Philly icon at this point. There's statues of...
When I was here, everyone would say, yo, Adrian, because the character's wife's name is the same as mine. Yeah. I've never met a female Adrian, by the way.
Sly Stallone does not do an amazing job. To be fair, I think back in the 70s, they weren't really concerned about dialect authenticity or anything like that. He sounds like he was from New York. It doesn't seem like they thought about it much more than that.
So let's give some examples. Okay. What's the difference between New York and Philadelphia accents?
So they're not entirely dissimilar. You can see why someone might sort of fall into one versus the other, but sort of the classic difference, the really salient linguistic difference, occurs in what's referred to as the short A. system. This is the pronunciation of the vowel a that might appear in a word like cat or ran or bag or something like that. And in this sort of broader mid-Atlantic area that Philadelphia and maybe New York might belong to, it's a very consistent feature that there are kind of two versions of this one vowel. I am from Philadelphia, so I have this exact sort of split, and hopefully it comes through on the audio here. But you can hopefully hear the difference between the a vowel that appears in a word like cat, 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 versus, I'll ham it up a little bit here, the a vowel that appears in a word like mad, 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 cat, cat, cat. Yep. And we end up with these two kind of distinctive vowels pronounced pretty differently in largely non-overlapping environments.
And so it means they're phonemic, is that right?
Probably. They're close to it. There's at least one well-known minimal pair that exists in Philadelphia English, one of which is can, the modal verb, to be able to do something. The other of which is can, like a can of soda.
Okay. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the word, the term phonemic, phonemes are this sort of the basic building blocks of mental sounds units, sort of that differentiate different words in different languages. So L and R, for example, in English, lead and red are phonemic because those two are different words. But in Japanese, sayonara, sayonara, it doesn't really matter if you use one or the other. I mean, one sounds better than the other, but they're not phonemic. So
you can't create a new word with one, right? In Japanese, replacing an L with an R doesn't create a new word. So red and lead are obviously totally different in English. And
if I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken, in New York and Philadelphia, like a and are different phonemes, but in the rest of the country, they're not different phonemes.
So in most of the rest of the United States, and really most of the rest of the Anglophone world, not all of it, but in a lot of the rest of the Anglophone world, this variation between a kind of lax a and a tense is mostly something that's a product of the shape of the word. You tend to get the tense form before nasal consonants. So in English, this is going to be N, M, and what we often...
In American English and Australian English as well. Right.
And NG, what we write as NG, but it's one sound.
So that's why you get like man, right? Oh, damn, and as opposed to the British would say damn, right? The man, this damn man, as opposed to this damn man. So that's how it sounds like.
And so in the United States, broadly speaking, if we were to just pick sort of a random speaker out of a hat, a random dialect, we would expect them to have this flat a-like vowel in words that don't have nasals, and we would expect the tenser a-like vowel. So you might expect hat and cat and mad, but man, ham, bang, etc. In Philadelphia and New York, that's no longer true. These sounds now appear in the specific words that they appear. They have become, as you said, probably phonemic, or at least really, really close to phonemic. Give Philadelphia English another 50, 100 years, they almost certainly will be.
They will be phonemic?
They will become, if they're not phonemically split yet, they certainly will be in a century's time.
So you see it like splitting?
They appear to be moving in that direction because more and more speakers actually perceive the two as the difference is salient to them.
Oh, interesting.
Most of the time when things are allophonic, that is to say not phonemic in form, speakers don't really pick up on allophonic variations. You kind of have to point out to them that they're even varying the sounds in that way. Japanese speakers famously struggle to distinguish L and R because their language treats it as one phoneme. The fact that people in Philadelphia are beginning to be aware, for example, that like can and can are different words, and the reason they are is because they have different vowels in them, suggests that we are moving towards a version of Philadelphia English where these sounds are distinct and could just appear anywhere.
Wow. Okay. So let's just have a brief run through the different major categories of sounds and vowels. I think we started with vowels that differentiate the different regional dialects in North America and maybe, if we have time, the rest of the English-speaking world.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, we're really going to be looking at the behavior of vowels here. And what that usually means in North America is when we look at a given dialect or a given speech form, what we're looking at is so-called mergers. This is a phonological phenomenon where two originally distinct vowels become one non-distinct vowel, or what's referred to as shifts or chain shifts, where sequences of vowels change their relative pronunciation, change their position in acoustic space with respect to one another, with each one kind of influencing the other in a kind of chain reaction, almost. So in North America, probably the single biggest one, the one that's driving a lot of action, is what's referred to as the cot-caught merger. And this is, as we mentioned, a merger, so a joining together of two sounds. This is the vowel that appears in the English word cot, C-O-T, and the English word caught, C-A-U-G-H-T. And some of you out there listening may think those are the same word. If you think that, congratulations, you have experienced this cot-caught merger. You are one of the speakers in North America for whom these vowels, and therefore these words, are no longer distinct from one another.
And that's like about half the population, is that right? Or
around there, yeah. And it's
spreading,
it's
right?
growing over time, right? 50 years ago, it would not have been really close to 50% of the population. 50 years from now, it'll probably be much more. It seems to be encroaching from the merged areas into the unmerged areas.
And this is actually why I teach accent and pronunciation training with the cot-caught merger, even though I don't do it myself normally. I teach Western American English, which has, they say what, cot and cot, right? Cot and cot. They say hot coffee as opposed to hot coffee. It's easier for the students, and you have fewer vowels to think about.
Part of the reason that mergers spread, like the cot-caught merger spreading at the expense of the unmerged form, is that they are actually simpler. They're simpler to learn, and they result in, pardon the technicality here, they result in computationally simpler vowel systems. The more vowels you merge, the fewer vowels you have, and therefore the less the vowels are likely to kind of interfere with one another, sound similar, be confusable for one another. So mergers often spread at the expense of distinctions without other factors.
Isn't that also true for like just the general pattern that when a group of people from different areas or different linguistic backgrounds come together, the next generation, when they learn the language, they tend to get rid of the more complex or like peripheral features?
Yeah, it's not unusual to see either regionally specific or typologically unusual, sort of uncommon linguistic features be, for lack of a better term, kind of sanded down by the process of contact. If two people speak a dialect, one of which has a larger, more complex vowel system and the other has a simpler one, the next generation of kids who perhaps grew up hearing both will have a kind of learning bias towards the simpler one. It's easier to learn that system.
Yeah.
And so if you're kind of, as a baby, an infant, right, you're picking between them, the simpler one seems so much more appealing.
Yeah.
You'll learn it so much more quickly.
I feel like as a rule, like people try to take the path of least resistance, right? So if you need to, why learn the more complex system rather than just the simpler system, which seems to work anyway? One
of the pretty common features of language learning and therefore language change is this idea of parsimony. Children, babies, infants, will sort of hypothesize. I know it sounds strange to talk about babies hypothesizing. We're talking about a subconscious process, of course, but they will tend to hypothesize the simplest explanation for the world that they encounter around them. If they're encountering these mixed vowel systems, one simple, one complex, they'll favor the simple one simply because it is easier to learn and explain.
I think, what's that called? Like Occam's razor? I mean, another term.
Occam's razor in a kind of a logical sense, but it's basically true. Yeah. At least as it pertains to languages, we have a kind of Occam's razor-like learning bias towards
I think that's true for all systems. Any sort of system you encounter in the natural world.
And any self-perpetuating system will have to, because it will be beaten out by simpler, more efficient ones if it doesn't really.
Yeah. And so I think because of this, like you see historically in the West, there's just one large area that's called the Western accent, whereas in the East, which was historically, there was more time settling there by the settlers, the colonialists, or colonists, I think, colonists. there's more different dialects in the East Coast of the U.S., I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in turn, if we were to push it back, the entirety of the UK is the size of like Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and it has more dialects than the entirety of North America put together.
Yeah, and you can see this not just in English. It's not just English. You also get this with Chinese varieties. We're going to call it varieties.
Yeah.
So the north of China is mostly, you know, Mandarin speakers, and they are Mandarin has a a lot more simplicity, I think, in the phonological system than, or like at least the phonetics, than the other more conservative other dialects, other varieties.
I'm not an expert in Mandarin
Yeah.
as such, but standard Mandarin is sort of regarded as having, again, kind of sanded off some of the rough edges, as it were, of the more regionally specific Chinese or Sinitic speech forms.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go. Let's talk about some other examples of vowel shifts.
So we mentioned the cot-caught merger as kind of one of the really big ones. Another of the sort of mergers that's at play that we see in North America is what is referred to as the, I'll try to be as clear as I can, marry, marry, marry merger. Yeah. Now again, I suspect a lot of you out there listening will say, those are all the same word. These are respectively M-E-R-R-Y, as in like Merry Christmas, M-A-R-R-Y, as in to marry someone, and M-A-R-Y, marry, the given name.
So I like to give the example. Mary was merry that she got married. Mary was merry because she got married.
Now, in a lot of North America, at least two of these three are going to be the same. And in many people's speech, all three of them are going to be.
I think there's a map out there that's that shows the regions where they say it the same or differently, or some of them differently, some of them the same. And the bit that's where it's all merged, the marry, marry, marry merged locations, that's like the entirety. It's almost the entirety of the
yes, it's
the US.
Very, very common to not distinguish any of those three words.
And Canada is definitely
from one another
merged for sure, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. And they're cot-caught merged as well.
Yes.
I don't think there's any part of Canada where they are not cot-caught merged.
No native speaking parts, in parts where like indigenous Canadian languages are spoken, obviously.
We should give some more examples as well, because I think if you go to Toronto, for example, they'll say, what is it, hot coffee?
Yeah.
Hot coffee, as opposed to
hot coffee with
coffee,
a nice raised aw.
Yeah, or
there.
you can go even further, hot coffee. You want some hot coffee?
Kind of the stereotypical sound of New York there a little bit.
Yeah.
So
anyway, the marry, 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 marry merger.
This merger is so complete for so many speakers that finding people who aren't merged is actually pretty rare. It's one of the distinctive features of Philadelphia, not merging it, that kind of drew Bill here in the beginning.
It's not just Philadelphia, right?
No,
like New York
it's not unique to Philadelphia.
It's like this region.
The Mid-Atlantic
right?
area, which broadly speaking is kind of Philadelphia down to Baltimore, as far north in New Jersey as till you hit New York, and maybe New York. There's debate about whether or not New York is properly part of the...
Huh.
The debate is basically, is New York part of the Mid-Atlantic, or is it a sister dialect to the Mid-Atlantic, forming some larger kind of... It's basically a debate about sort of cladistics rather than... Everyone agrees New York is part of this area. It's how closely related is it to the speech forms further south.
What's not similar? What makes it not...
So the major difference, really, we mentioned this split short A, right? This was our sad, mad split. New York has this split short A system, the characteristic feature of the Mid-Atlantic, but it has a different one.
Oh, that's right.
So they have this tensed A vowel, but it doesn't always occur in the same words that it would in Philadelphia, in South Jersey, in Baltimore. So for example, for me, a word like bag has a nice, lax A. And in New York, G is one of the environments that this tense A appears in. So you'll get bag.
Oh, okay.
You'll get bag, and you'll get mad. And a lot of voiced consonants tend to do this. You also get it with sh, famously cash.
And it's much more common there. They have a lot more of this a raising, right? A tensing.
So, I mean, any person who speaks the Mid-Atlantic dialect in Philadelphia will do this. So it's not necessarily more common. What I will say is their raised token is often more raised.
Okay. So I meant like it happens in more phonetic positions, right?
The environments wherein tensing occurs
can we just list them out if you
okay, so let me see
I remember we did this in
I remember
in
all
class,
of them.
Right? We did this in class, but I don't remember exactly.
So before sh, IPA, sh would usually be
You
written.
don't have it here, right?
Yes, no. In Philadelphia, cash. In New York, cash.
Cash, yeah.
I believe voiced obstruents will often trigger this. So this will be like B, D, and G.
Oh, okay.
So, right, this is our bag. This is our mad. This is our cab. Right, as opposed to in Philadelphia where we would say bag, mad, but cab.
Okay.
And there are a couple...
But it doesn't work with sad, right?
No, because when I say like, oh, before G, as you mentioned earlier, at this point, these things are probably phonemic.
Okay.
So what were once originally purely phonological environments, they're not like that anymore. Okay. They have become, most words with D will do this, well, but not all of them because speakers have started to pull them apart.
All right. So the main difference, the main reason, area of contention is that New York doesn't have the same type of
it has a different short A system, which suggests that New York and the sort of the southern mid-Atlantic, shall we say, split apart before the exact details of how this split short A system worked out were settled. And they settled differently in New York, and then Philly, Baltimore, and South Jersey kind of aggregated to become a different parallel split short A system.
Oh, interesting. And as a native speaker of Philadelphian English, like, how often do you encounter like situations where you
encounter situations where my perception of the sounds differs from
you're like I wouldn't say that.
So I actually, this is a little bit of an anecdote. I don't want to get too far off topic, but when I was a kid, right, every English speaking kid, you grow up Dr. Seuss, right? And I read Green Eggs and Ham. And because of the split short A system that exists in Philadelphia and Baltimore, I would never, ever in a million years, rhyme ham and am. They do not rhyme.
So am is lax?
Am has a lax vowel and ham has a tense one.
Can you say that again?
So ham, but am.
Okay, it's really subtle, I think.
And so I have been told that my split short A is not all that split. Bill LeBeau, that is, famously did not actually believe I had a split short A at first when I went to UPenn. And in that classic Bill way, after one of the classes, he was like, David, wait. And that sort of breathy voice that he had. And he got out a recorder and put me on a spectrogram and made me read a bunch of sounds and measured my two short A's. And he was like, well, there it is. There we go. He convinced himself. I do actually have them, but you're right. Mine are not. They're not that perceptually distinct. If I were to exaggerate a little bit for your sake, for the sake of the audience. So this would be am, but ham.
And that's how I teach it in class as well. So I teach people like Brits would say man versus man. And that's not phonemic in most of the US, but here it's phonemic.
And so when I was a kid, I remember we read, Green Eggs and Ham, I will not eat them. Sam, I am. I will not eat green eggs and ham, which does not rhyme with am. And I was like, wow, Dr. Seuss is bad. He's terrible at writing rhymes. And for a long time, I just assumed that this was a poorly written book, and I couldn't figure out why kids liked it. And it wasn't until I got to UPenn that I was like, I'm one of, a handful of people along the East Coast of the US for whom this rhyme does not work. Pretty much every other English speaker in North America got it.
And the rest of the world.
And the rest of the Anglophone world more broadly, right?
Because the split A system only exists in like this small area.
It's pretty unusual to have. It's a pretty distinctive feature why we treat the Mid-Atlantic as its own area.